Hey, what is up guys? My name is Mackenzie and this is week 7 out of 12 in my 12 and 12 Design to Code challenge. So this week I got another design tutorial for you guys. I'm going to show you how to go about designing a sleek and modern portfolio site that you guys can use to show off the things that you're building. Alright guys, let's jump on this thing right here and get going. Alright, so let's dive in. I'm going to go ahead and create a new document. I'm going to select the document type as artboard. The artboard size, I'm just going to do the desktop HD design, which is 1440 by 1024 pixels. And I'm going to hit OK. So I'm going to start by setting up a grid. So this is 1440 pixels. I want the grid to be 1000 pixels wide. So if I did my math correctly, that is 220 pixels on either side. And then I want this to be 2 columns and have a gutter of 25 pixels. So let's give that a try. Perfect. All right, so I'm going to start out by setting up this font. So I'm thinking up at the top, I'm going to have a big, bold, in-your-face, yet beautiful and sleek and stylized typography to introduce you to the site, to tell people in a few short words what you're all about. So I found this font called Lust, and it is absolutely beautiful. So I'm going to use that here. I'm going to say designer, period, coder, and let's do maker. I'm just going to hit Control Enter. Oh, I love it. Now as for the color, let's select a darkish gray color like I got here. So I'm going to do, actually I'll just keep it as it is, hex code 414148. That looks pretty great. Isn't this font just beautiful? It's so elegant and just love it. So I want to create a simple logo. So I'm thinking I want something big and bold to contrast the weight. I don't want it to have the same size, but I want it to have the same visual weight. So what I'm thinking of doing is creating just a circle, and I'm gonna pick like a very bright, luminant pink color. So let's try something like, maybe not so in your face as that. Maybe desaturate it slightly, but I still want it to be very bright. So that's a little large. Let's shrink it down a bit. Maybe make it the same height as the D. And then I'm going to copy that font and I'm just going to say MC, my initials. And let's center that. Let's make it a white font and shrink it down a bit. Bring it above and gonna hold Option and Shift and scale it down. That's a bit large still. Let's shrink it down a bit more. Beautiful. So the reason I wanted to do this is because I want there to be a lot of white space in this design. So we have this designer, coder, maker over on the left side, but I want your eye to be drawn to the right side, to the logo as well. And even though visually this takes up way more space, the copy does, the bright, bold color of the logo still pulls your eye back to the right side. All right, so next, I think that is all I want on this top banner part. Next, I want to create a section for the portfolio items for the various projects I have done. So what I'm thinking is I'm going to contrast this quite a bit, make it that same dark gray color. So let's select that, and I'm going to make sure it's even on either side. So going to, let me select all of this and just visually center it. That looks pretty good. I accidentally grouped it, but that's a good thing. I'll just call this group banner, and I'm going to group the logo itself and call that logo, and then delete that other group I created by accident. Cool. So from here, what I want to do is create this cool grid for the portfolio items. So I'm going to drag the artboard down a bit so we have some space to work with. And then that background shape as well. So what I'm thinking here is the very first one. Let's bring up the guides again. I'm going to grab the rounded rectangle tool and I'm just going to create a shape that is, let's see, let's make it, hold shift to make it a perfect square, but I want to extend it to the other column, so let's bring it over a bit. And then 30 pixel radius is quite large. Maybe bring it down to like 9 or 10. It looks pretty good. Then let's change the color to white. Perfect. And then let's just select the distance here. So we have 136 pixels high. Let's add that same distance right here, like so. Beautiful. So what I'm thinking is I'm going to have several different ones. Let's create 2 additional ones like we do here. And then we have a 25 pixel gutter. So I want to do the same from top to bottom. So I'm going to drag marquee to 25 pixels. Perfect. And then I will duplicate that. I don't think these ones should be quite as high. I'm just going to shrink them up a bit. Beautiful. So each one of these is going to be a separate project. So I'm going to go ahead and start styling these. So on this first one, let's go ahead and group that. I'm going to call this group Design Resources, because that's something I spend my time on. So I've gone ahead and created a few images to use for the background of each of these various blocks. So I'm going to go ahead and pull those up. For the first one, I'm going to grab this Design Resources illustration I made. And what I'm thinking is just kind of using this for texture in the background. So I'm going to make this pretty large, and then I'm going to put it in the Design Resources group, and I'm going to use the background shape as a mask. Something like this to start. But what I was thinking is let's duplicate the rounded rectangle so it's sitting on top, and let's change the color to maybe a pinkish, purplish color. Something like that. And then let's drop the opacity. So the colors of the background shape or the background image are coming through a bit. So I'm gonna drop the opacity of this as well, because I'm gonna have text sitting on top of this. So what I wanna do is create a text box, and I will say, I'm going to use the Lust regular font again. The Lust font is available on Typekit if you want to go ahead and use that. I'm going to say meticulously crafted UI design assets. Let's select that, change the color to white. Bring it above that. There we go. Let's see. And I'm going to shrink the font size down quite a bit, so we get it on 2 lines. Maybe something like that. The leading seems to be a bit high, so let's shrink that a bit. Even that looks a bit large. Let's shrink it down slightly more. Cool, that looks good. And then I want to have an additional font for the name of this project, and I'll just call this Design Resources. But I was thinking of combining this Lust, the serif font, with a sans serif, and a good go-to is something like Proxima Nova, and I'll just use, let's try the regular font. Let's make it all caps. Actually, let's make it a bold font, and then make the font size pretty small, because we don't want it to compete with the big title of this section. That looks good. So I feel like this background color is a bit off, because this is a lot more vibrant than this one. So let's try that again. Maybe it needs a bit more pink in there. That looks pretty good. Maybe you drop the opacity slightly more to maybe 60%. Cool. Then I want to do the same thing for these two as well. So the next one is going to be my Design for Developers course. So let's create a group. whoops, and change this to be called Design for Developers in the Layers panel. And I'm just going to go ahead and do the same thing. I'm going to pull up the Design for Developers logo. Let's make it something like pretty large and cut it off a bit. What do you guys think of this logo, by the way? I'm not in love with it. I might use it. I might end up coming up with something else before I launch the course, but in the meantime, I think it works pretty well. Okay, so I'm going to stick with that. I'm going to duplicate the background shape just like I did before. And I'm thinking a green color for this block. Let's just choose a bright green for now. Drop the opacity again. Let's try 60%. I'm going to grab that logo, drop the opacity of that as well, because I don't want that to compete with the type on top. And let's drop that to like 30%. And I'm going to move it so, actually, if you see right here, it's causing a bit of a visual tension, in my opinion, because there's just like so little space between the two. I feel like it should either be more space to let it breathe a bit, or it should be cut off. So I'm going to go on the cut off route. So something like that looks good. Maybe push it up a bit more. Then let's grab this font, bring it up in the layers panel. For this one, I'll just say devs learn design. And I'll keep it the same font size as above, but I'll try to center it vertically. And let me grab the title as well. And this one, I will say Design for Developers. So I want the typography, specifically the Lust font, to be the star of each of these blocks. So I'm going to make the font size a bit bigger. So let's see, that's 74. Let's go ahead and make it 75 pixels. Something like that looks good. And then I'm just going to eyeball it and center it vertically. We'll clean up any mistakes in the code, but for now, that's good. And then I want to make this 75 as well. And I'm going to bump up the leading slightly, maybe to like 90 points on this one. And then try to center it horizontally as well as vertically on each of them. Cool. All right, so that green is clashing a bit with the pink. It's a bit more vibrant than the other one. So let's change that. Let's maybe make it slightly darker. See, that looks pretty good to me. I'm gonna go with that. So I'm gonna use hex code 48DC56. Then let's move on to the next one. So for this, I was thinking of doing my LOL colors project. And since we did the Design for Developers in the upper left corner, let's do the opposite just to make this a bit more dynamic. And I'm gonna put this in the lower right and cut it off a bit. And I'm gonna group both of those. Call this one LOL colors. Maybe show the full teardrop color palette. Maybe not. That looks pretty good. Then I'm going to simply copy the Design for Developers text, bring it up above. Can't really see it because it's white, but I'm going to grab this, and for this one, let's try maybe a purple color. That looks pretty good. Let's drop the opacity a bit. Cool, and I will say, whoops, LOL colors. And I'll say curated color palettes. And open this up a bit so it can be on 3 lines. Perfect. Okay, so looking at this now, these colors look pretty similar. So let's try to make it a bit more purple. I'll add in some blue to that. Yeah, that looks pretty good. So I'm gonna hit OK. So I'm gonna go ahead and do one more. I'm thinking of switching this up a bit and doing something like this. So I'm gonna go ahead and copy the design resources one, that whole group. I'm just gonna duplicate that and bring it down. And then let's go in and make sure it's 25 pixels. There we go. Let's bring it up. Beautiful. So instead of going the full 2 columns, I'm thinking maybe do something like this. I'm going to grab the 2 shapes here and do 3/4 of it. And the reason being is because I also want to have a link in here. And I think this might be a good break in the grid and then a good place to stick that link. Just to make it a little bit different, a little unexpected. Normally you'd expect to have something like this or full column, but instead I'm going to do 3/4 of the second column. And then for this one, even though the project is not around anymore, I'm going to use the unicast mascot that I created. Maybe do something like that. Maybe make it a bit bigger. Delete the design resources. Let's drop the opacity of Bruce a bit. And then I will just say design to code web apps. And I'll change the name to Unicasts. Maybe code should be on the top, web apps should be on the bottom. That looks better. And as for the color, I'm thinking we should have a blue up in here. So let me try something like maybe a more teal color. So like a bluish green, maybe more on the blue side. That looks pretty good. So I'm going to go with 29CEF1 hex code. So let's zoom in, take a look. So up top we have this big, bold design code maker on the left side, and then a subtle yet bold logo. And the way I'm making it bold is through the use of color. And then you go down, you see the various projects that I've done. And then the idea is you can click on either of these to learn more about the projects, or maybe they go to a separate website. I love this font too. Cool. And then when I said I want the link right here, I'll say view all projects. And then that's far too large. Obviously, I want this to be fairly small so it doesn't compete. And I don't even want this to be white, so I'm going to make it a bit brighter than the background color. And then when we go to code this, I'll probably add a hover state for the logo color. I wonder what it would look like if we let right justify it to the edge of the columns. What do you guys think? That just feels off to me for some reason, so I'm going to switch that back. Cool. So let's see, we have 136 pixels. Let's make sure we have the same distance on the bottom. And then we'll go ahead and make a footer as well. Let's bring down a guide. Oh, whoops, undo that. Cool. Now let's bring up the background to the edge of that. Beautiful. All right, then I just want to create a simple footer to link to the various things. So I'm gonna copy the logo. I'm gonna have that down here as well. Let's bring up the guides to align the logo. That looks good. Then I'm going to duplicate this text. Let's make the color the same as that dark gray. And let's say get in touch. And then I'm going to take this font as well. Let's make it that dark gray. Let's maybe say email. This is far too large, so let's shrink that down a bit. I want it to be bigger, but not too big. Maybe shrink down the get in touch too. That looks pretty good. And then I'm going to duplicate that and say follow me on. And then I'll do Twitter, give some space, dribble, copy that and the space. And then let's do like Instagram too. All right, and then I just want to bring up the artboard. I feel like that font size is still too large. Let's shrink that down slightly more. Maybe bring this over. Give it the same amount of space on either side. Cool, let's group all of that and come down, change this group name to footer. I'm going to group the various items inside, call this logo. Say get in touch and follow. Let's change this background to background, and I'm going to go ahead and lock that. Awesome. So let's go ahead and review what we've done. So we got this banner up top, very clean. It's very minimal, yet powerful in my opinion, and it's using this gorgeous font. I think the font makes this entire design in my opinion. Then when you scroll down, we got all the various projects. Again, we have this gorgeous font that we're using for the titles. And then we add a bit of personality through the use of color. Each one has its individual color, and then the background image to add some texture and, again, a bit of personality to it. And then we finally have the footer. I wonder what it would look like if we changed this to be right justified. That's not bad. And then it lines up with the logo on the right, or I mean on the left in the footer. Let's see, I'm gonna undo that. Option 1, option 2, 1. I think I kind of like option 2 actually, now that I'm looking at it. Yeah, I think it works both ways, but personal preference, I feel like I'm leaning towards the copy to be on the right side instead of the left. All right, that is all for this one. I really hope you enjoyed this episode and you learned a lot from it. If you are interested in learning design and how to make your sites both beautiful and user-friendly without having to rely on Bootstrap or other frameworks for the UI of your site, I am creating a course just for you. It's called Design for Developers, and it's launching on April 28th. You can learn more about it at designfordevelopers.co. And be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Got a new video coming out every Thursday. And next week, I'm gonna show you how to turn this design into the front end HTML and CSS. All right, see you guys next time.